Good morning, Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVSAUDIO in Roselle, New Jersey. We finally jumped into the wiring rescue on this beautiful street glide. So I didn't just want to cut all the cables out. I wanted to take everything apart and make sure that what I suspected was correct, and I was correct. So the reason the client is having issues and the battery voltage is dropping into the 10s after only 30-40 seconds of playing his music is the bike was rewired. It was, the wiring job was clean, but they used copper-clad aluminum wire. They did not use good wire. So the bike was not able to supply the amount of current that the amplifiers needed to do their job. So that was the first problem. The second problem was the bike was running 2 batteries. The issue with the way they ran the 2 batteries is they installed a battery isolator, which makes absolutely no sense. So when you install an isolator, it's typically installed so you can isolate 2 batteries, which doesn't make sense in audio competition because if you're going to compete, you want both batteries to supply current to your amplifier. The way the isolator was hooked up was in between the primary battery under the seat and the rear battery in the tail, and then when you turn the ignition on, it paralleled both batteries. So both batteries became one. The reason this doesn't make sense is you have to turn the ignition on to turn the radio on. So that means that the batteries are always paralleled as long as the bike's on or the radio's on. So then why put in the isolator? The only time we would isolate the 2 batteries is if we were running a lithium battery and an AGM or a regular battery. So the batteries have different characteristics, so they can't be charged at the same time. The lithium battery charges differently and charges way higher. Lithium batteries rest at 13, 14 volts. Regular AGM batteries rest at 12.8, almost 13 volts. They charge differently, they discharge differently, they have to be charged differently. So sometimes when we're doing big audio builds, you have no choice and you have to mix AGM with a large lithium in back. So what we do is we wire them in parallel, but we install a high quality circuit breaker like this one. The reason we do that is if you have to charge the battery, you can just break the connection on the breaker. That separates the front rear battery. You can hook up the lithium battery charger to the rear lithium battery without affecting the front battery, and then plug in a tender or a charger to charge your underseat battery. Once both batteries are fully charged, you can go ahead and reconnect the circuit. So this would be the proper device to use. You could also use a fuse. It wouldn't make sense to use an isolator because the 2 major isolators they make, one handles 80 amps of current and the other one handles 200 amps of current. The one that handles 200 amps of current is huge. It's about this tall and this wide. So it would just make more sense to install a manual switch like this. The other issue is they ran regular batteries and then they made a nice steel mount that I'm going to show you in a second to hold the isolator that wasn't supposed to be there. So the rear battery is half the size of the front battery, which doesn't make sense at all. If you have the space to do a full-size battery, batteries are supposed to be same size, same age, same charging characteristics. So if you do a 900 battery in the front, you're supposed to do a 900 battery in the back. That way, the stator sees it as one big 1800 battery instead of 2 separate 9s. Now, if you mix them, then it's going to undercharge the small battery, or it's going to overcharge the small battery, undercharge the big battery. It just makes more sense if you use 2 the same size. Now, I understand in custom fabrication, it's not always possible, and sometimes you have to mix the sizes. It's not a perfect world, especially in a motorcycle. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. So if the batteries are different sizes, the best way to charge them is to install some kind of device that breaks the circuit between the batteries and charge them individually. So now I'm going to show you what we're fixing here, what was done wrong, and how we're going to fix it. As you can see, the wiring was done very neatly. It was all test taped together. I just cut all the wire ties. But look at all that wasted space here where they could have done a larger battery. We're going to do the same lithium battery that we did under the seat back here because obviously there's space for it. We're going to remove this. The other issue is there is no protection. There is no fuses. So here's the main power feed that goes through the battery isolator. Then when the isolator turns on, it goes back through this harness, under the rail, and right up to this battery. No fuse at all. As you can see, there is no audio fuse installed on this battery at all. There is no audio fuse installed on this battery. Big no-no, big fire hazard. On top of that, they made a nice bracket. but the battery's not held down. Battery can just bounce around, arc, hit the tire, not safe. The worst part is they did all this hard work and they used aluminum wire. This is copper clad aluminum wire. You can see it in the jacket right there. So you're gonna use cheap wire to run a bike that has 6,000 watts RMS. So we're gonna remove that, and then I've said this a million times, and I'm gonna keep saying it. Please stop using cheap wire. You guys spend tens of thousands of dollars on your Harley, thousands of dollars on your stereo, and then wiring is the least expensive thing you could do to make sure that the amplifiers get the amount of current that they need. We only use Stinger wire here at the shop. But all the name brand wire is good. Rockford is good. Kicker is good. So with wiring, New Concepts makes oxygen-free, and you have to be careful because a lot of these companies, they'll offer the good wire, and then they'll offer the CCA wire. CCA wire is copper-clad aluminum, should never, ever be used on a motorcycle or a car, period. Shouldn't even be made, but whatever. So even when we buy excess power batteries, we love excess power batteries, comes with this 4-gauge wiring kit. We have a bunch of these laying around because we don't use them because it's copper-clad aluminum. So we're doing the right thing by buying a secondary battery, and then the wire that comes with the battery isn't adequate enough to carry the current from the battery to our amplifiers. So it looks pretty, it's nice and crimped and heat shrunk, but a telltale sign is when you're reading the jacket of the wire, it's gonna have all kinds of words, and it's gonna say power flow, and it's gonna say this, and it's gonna say super high performance. But one thing it will not say is OFC. OFC means oxygen-free copper. Cheap wire, good wire. The good wire will always say oxygen-free copper, OFC power cable. So get yourself some Stinger cable, some Rockford Fosgate cable, some Kicker cable, some New Concepts cable. There's a bunch of companies out there. Just search for OFC copper, and then you won't run into problems like this. Take your time, crimp your connections, get yourself a torch and some thick electrical solder, and solder all the ends on the ring terminals. There's a ton of great YouTube videos that'll show you how to properly solder lugs onto copper cable. The torch is cheap. It's like 20 bucks at Home Depot. Solder will run you like 10, 20 bucks. And you're gonna have better connections that won't vibrate. Get yourself a high quality hydraulic crimper. You can pick it up for like 60 bucks on Amazon. But this is all stuff that will give you all the power that you paid for from these expensive amplifiers that you're buying and putting on these bikes. So let me get started with my day. It's 7 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. I wanna get some of these bikes out of here. Talk to you guys later.